Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's Cabinet meeting. I'm going to start with the usual, which is announcements. I know everybody here has done the announcements time and time again, but our colleague from the Gazette is here for the first time, so I will go through them just for your pleasure. The fire evacuation procedures for the evening meetings are that there are no fire alarms scheduled, so if you hear a fire alarm, please leave the building by the reception, the fire exit located at the side of the room, through reception and meet in the War Memorial Park. The meeting is webcast, it's live webcast, so it is on YouTube. And in terms of microphones, if we can sit with the microphones where they are, they will capture us when we speak. In terms of mobile phones, please turn them off or switch them to silent, please. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence, and there are none this evening. We're all here. Do I have any declarations of interest on the agenda items before us this evening? None? Urgent matters. There is one urgent matter this evening, and Councillor Cubitt has an announcement to make to Cabinet. Annalie, please.
Thank you, Leader. Good evening, Leader, co-leader, Cabinet members, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to announce on behalf of this Cabinet that having worked on plans to inject civic pride back into the top of town, in accordance with our council plan, we are now in a position to roll out a programme of improvements and investment in this incredibly important area. We are proud of our town, so we want to invest in improving the environment. We are determined to improve the look and the feel of the top of town. The leader, Councillor Laura James, officers and I held a great listening event at the Gabardine back in May this year with many local businesses present. We share the aspirations of our wonderful local businesses and we want to support them in any way we can. We want to be proud of the top of town. We want residents to throng here and for our businesses to thrive and grow. We listened, we heard, and we are now going to deliver. Thanks to our fantastic officers, we have already begun to take action. We have cleaned the pavements, Market Square, removed vape stickers from bins, and cleaned street furniture. We are in the process of improving the shrub beds. We are going to pollard and lift the trees, and we are going to install festoon lights. We are going to repaint planters which need refreshing. And we have started to repaint the railings around the town, despite the fact the railings are Hampshire County Council's responsibility. These are just some examples of what we have started to do. However, there are further examples of us listening to our local businesses. The public liability insurance standard is 5 million. And this council was requiring our businesses to cover for 10 million if they sought outdoor seating. This was costing our local businesses a great deal of extra money and was an additional red tape headache. We have taken the decision to accept the standard 5 million cover as being sufficient. This is one example of us listening and actioning what our businesses have said to us. We want to support you. We want to promote a buzzing cafe culture at the top of town. We want to encourage live music. All licensed premises can hold live music until 11 o'clock at night, and any requests after 11 o'clock can be applied for at a cost of £21. To date, since 2012, no premises have been turned down by this council. We want to help businesses to freshen up their shop fronts. So we are preparing to launch a new grant scheme to help renew and refresh shop fronts. And for new businesses, that grant will extend to supporting fit-outs too. This is a partnership, and we need businesses to take pride in their immediate front of premises too. And we are taking a zero-tolerance approach to graffiti, and we expect shop owners to clean up graffiti immediately. We will work with businesses to work out how best to address this scourge on our town. We can't thank our local businesses enough for engaging. You are the bloodline of our local economy. And we can't thank the officers enough. You have all done an amazing job so far. Basingstoke is a great place to live. We are a great place to invest a business in. And we want to support local businesses. We want to encourage residents from near and far to spend time and money and enjoy themselves in this historic part of town. Thank you.
Thank you, Annalise. Appreciate it. Okay, colleagues. Item 4 on the agenda this evening is minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of March. Do I have your permission to sign those as a true and accurate record of the meeting? Thank you. I will do so. Item 5 on the agenda is the motion referred from Council, the transfer of ownership and maintenance of the Basingstoke Children's Cemetery. Laura, would you like to address that motion to Cabinet?
Thank you, Leader. Sorry. There was an overwhelming agreement at Council that this cemetery should be kept well maintained and looked after. Our hearts go out to the families that have lost a baby or a child and then face further distress about the condition of the cemetery when they visit. We said at the time that we owed it to those that had loved ones there to look at whether it would be possible and helpful for the council to take over the care of the site from the Hampshire Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust. We need to look at whether we could achieve what the families and friends who visit there want, rather than just giving false hope. Since the motion was passed at Council, the Leader and myself visited the site with officers from the Council, and they have been liaising with Hampshire Hospital and NHS Foundation Trust to understand the current situation. These investigations continue. As a Cabinet, we want to ensure that all the relevant information can be gathered for us to consider in a full report to a future meeting, so that we all have the information we need to make a decision on the best way forward.
Thank you, Councillor James. Are we happy that that is the correct way forward for us? Are you all comfortable with that as a direction of travel?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Laura. Okay, on to the main substantive items today. What I'm going to do, if it's okay, I'm going to take item 9, the capital programme outturn first, because Andy has his name down, Councillor McCormick has his name down to speak this evening. So I'll take that as our first public speaking. Gavin, would you like to introduce the paper, and then I'll ask Andy to come up and ask us his question.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, this is the outturn for the last financial year. It was due to come to Cabinet some time ago, but unfortunately elections got in the way, and that's why the delay. It's more obvious on the revenue one, where there's a prediction of when the election will be, which is turned out to be wrong. Let's hope our 151 officer didn't put a bet on. So going through, you'll see there's a significant variance, unfortunately, something we've been seeing frequently in our capital outturns. But this one seems to be down to one single reason. The officers have been trying very hard to make sure we actually stick to it, and credit to them. You'll see there's been about £1 million worth of slippages, but also £1 million worth of projects brought forward. It's quite a handy table on page 40, it's table 1 on page 49, which we strip out the many down matter, because many down is such a big matter that obviously a tiny bit of slippage, if that had been signed just before we went into PERDA twice, then obviously that variance wouldn't be there, but we are where we are. And that's the significant variance. It's 7.749 million variance, and this is to effectively put money into the money down to pay for infrastructure that haven't triggered the payment because we haven't got the finalised deal at that stage or this stage. So that's why that money sits there. Other than that, it's actually an improved picture. There are some variances which I think I want to mention. The variance to the money we were given to help Homes for Ukraine. We actually underspent on that money, and that's not because we had a delay. That's because we were just too efficient and effective at delivering the scheme asked for at a lower value. Unfortunately, government won't let us use that money to do anything else. They're asking for it back, which is unfortunate. But it is a demonstration that when local government is given the funding, it can deliver schemes very effectively, very quickly and very efficiently. Something we should be proud of, and something that Angela Rayner should be listening to, because we're better guardians of the government, taxpayers' money than perhaps the government is at sometimes. So there are a few extra schemes. Most of them are 106 monies, which are going to specific schemes, generally small schemes, but there are a couple to pick up on. One is the replacement of council-owned vehicles. We're having to spend an extra £200,000 on that, and that's essentially down to the cost of replacing vehicles has gone up. The cost of living crisis, we're not immune to it. It's a cost pressure on this council. That's likely to be an ongoing cost pressure into the future, where we'll have to look at how we adjust to meet the cost of replacing vehicles in the future. And the other one I think is worthy of celebration. There's two items relating to Tadley Pool. The first one, it's going to cost a little bit more to put in the moving floor in Tadley Pool, which means that you can have it at a more shallow level to help swimmers of all abilities. I should go there myself to learn to swim. That's going to cost a bit more, but it's such an important thing for one of our rural pools. Tadley it's what makes Tadley so special for all the villages around, gives them access to sporting facilities. They're also getting some solar panels put on the roof. We're not funding that directly, but it will show in our capital programme because the money's come in for us to then pass on. So that's all. There is a list of those requests that we'll be asking council to approve. They are listed. Unless someone's got any questions, I don't propose going through all of them. But basically, it's an okay position. Just the frustration that it's underspent again, but it is this time just down to one particularly large amount of capital spend.
Thank you, Gary. Andy, do you want to come forward? Good to see you, Andy. Come and take a seat and join us. You know the microphone in front of you. It's all yours.
Thank you, Leader. So, 37.5% of our budgeted capital expenditure, some £7.7 million, has not been spent this year due to a, quote, rephased, unquote, spend for many down land and infrastructure funding. This time last year, you were confident that money would be spent in the last financial year. What confidence should we now have that the ongoing discussions in section 2.19 will actually be completed during the 2024-25 quarter two? We've had press articles in November 2023 and last month saying freehold purchases nearing completion, but how close are we to actually completing? Basingstoke is suffering from an acute shortage of housing. We've dodged a bullet with the new national planning and policy framework only requiring us to demonstrate a 4-year supply, but we still have thousands on our waiting list, people waiting years for houses, and young people being priced out of the market, having to pay exorbitant rents or move out of the area. The explanations offered to me on previous occasions are of difficulties with land drawdown, of a 28-year-old land deal we could not draw up today, and protracted discussions agreeing on land valuation. But 28 years, that's headline grabbing. We granted outline permission 4 years ago. It will probably be at least another 4 years before development starts. Winklebury short health provision. Delays on Manydown have had an impact on the health provision in the Winklebury region, where the figures were calculated for 7,000 residents of Winklebury and Worthing and not including the potential 10,000 residents of Manydown. There's also knock-on effects on other aspects of infrastructure provision, not least a new secondary school. So my second question to you is, do you need help? Genuinely, this is an offer of help, getting this scheme over the line. Should we be setting up a call with Angela Rayner's office?
Thank you, Andy. I'm going to start with Gavin to come back.
You're absolutely right. It's embarrassing for this authority that land we bought back in 96, 98 is still sitting there undeveloped. Totally agree with every word of that. And I don't think there's anything. I know that Councillor Cubitt has done everything she possibly can and was more than happy to do things that she shouldn't do in order to get this progressed as quickly as possible. Because we are desperate to get it started. It should have been started. It should have been built. That should now be a settled community, and we should be on many down south. The wasted years obviously is not something this cabinet can take responsibility for, because obviously during that time we were sitting on the opposition benches pushing for progress. I will hand over to Councillor Cubitt and she can share her frustrations with you.
Go on, Ollie.
Yeah, well, just to say, thank you for your offer. Very gratefully received. I agree with everything you say. It's a story of frustration. But from the moment we took over the administration, the leader and the co-leader and the cabinet have been absolutely resolved to execute the land drawdown, and it will happen. It will happen. And that's all I'm going to say at this juncture.
It's interesting, isn't it, Andy, how, we've lived and breathed this for as long as you and I have been on the council, as long as colleagues around this table have been on the council, actually, if you think about it. And it started way before we ever came on the council with the original option being purchased. That original option needed dealing with at the time, not 30 years later, because 30 years later it wouldn't have been written the way it was written back then. That's the truth of the matter. The actual convoluted structure that was created back in 2015, 2016 by the previous administration would not be where we would start today if we were doing the land deal over again. So we've picked up the pieces less than a year ago, and we have driven this like you could not believe to get it to the stage where it's at. So thank you for your offer. It is received with the intent it was given, and thank you. But no, we don't need it, because this is going to happen. More than that, actually, let's just think this through. The land deal and the heads of terms have been agreed. The detail is being finalised. It will be finalised. It will be done. The result of that is going to be 3,500 houses being built on North Manydown. The best part of 1,400 of them will be affordable homes. 70% of that will be socially rented homes, as per our policies. A third of it will be the brand new country park. The open space, the school, the high street, the shops, the investment in community centres, investment that will then flow into Winkleberry, because we've made that commitment and we're very clear on that Winkleberry needs to see its share of what happens as a result of Manydown. So think about the doctor's surgery and the commitments that have been given, and we need Vivid to follow through on that too, and we will hold their feet to the fire on that. Think about the extra community centre that's been talked about as part of the regeneration. And then also everything else that flows from that we can offer in support of regeneration in the future for Winkleberry, should that be the direction of travel the community want to go in. We need to take people with us. So just suffice to say that, we've lived and breathed Manydown for all these years. We have driven it like no one's business since we took control of this council, because we know how important it is. And everybody who lives in a village in Basingstoke knows how important Manydown is, because they've suffered every bit of speculative development, because the Tories sat on it for all those years, put all the obstacles in the way they did, and had us at the High Court, and it took the High Court to get this council to take the action that has resulted in where we are today, really, all those years later. So yes, it's going to happen, and it's going to make a massive difference to this borough, a really positive difference. So thank you, and I appreciate your question, but we are determined we're going to see this delivered. Absolutely, Andy. Would you like to come back for a supplementary? It's only fair.
Just a couple of things referenced in what I said previously. So can I have those assurances on the health provision? Because I know that the health provision that is being proposed for Winkleberry Centre is almost certainly not adequate, including the overall shortages that we have in Basingstoke at the moment. I see this as a golden opportunity to help rectify that and get waiting times for doctors' appointments down. And the other thing is the secondary school, which is, under previous administration, something they didn't really care that much about. The county would love to get away with not building a secondary school if it possibly could. So can I have some assurances on your support to get those things implemented?
You offered Angela's help. Yeah. If there is one thing Angela can help us with, is the ICB and the debt that they are in and the struggle that they have to fund primary care services. If there is one thing that the new Labour government can do, It is to directly tackle primary care shortage of funding, because we face that in our community day in, day out. And I know that Luke Murphy has taken that seriously in the literature he's put out, in the comments he's given, and I respect the man to give him the time to make those representations. But it's the government that step up to that. So that's what we need to see. And on the schools, I would agree, because the county council is struggling financially, terribly financially at the moment. And the problem they're going to have is to deliver the things that they need to deliver. So 3-year funding for local government firmed up, bailing councils out of their financial difficulties because of the 14 years of cuts they've been suffering under. All of that is an agenda that the government really can help us with. And I'm sure they will do it. I know they've been given all the murmurings so far, but we're going to look to it. So yes, Angela Rayner can help us with that, most certainly, Andy, and I would look to that from the government to help both the county council and its financial issues so that it can deliver the secondary school, because that is their responsibility. We've made sure they've got the land. We've made sure that that's part of Money Down, but that they need to honour that promise and deliver that. And as far as the doctor's surgery is concerned, we've made sure that Vivid would give the extra space, actually, the quality of space that's required as part of the Vivid regeneration. We've got the extra space as part of the planning application, if you remember. But we need the ICB to be given the breathing space in order that their revenue funding and their capital funding have such capacity to do the things we want them to do. And they certainly don't have that at the moment. And we know that's a major obstacle. Thank you, Andy. Appreciate your contribution this evening. Okay, colleagues, would anybody else like to say anything more on this paper beyond what we've said? We're good? Okay. The recommendation on the paper is in front of us. Gavin has already referred to it. Are you happy to take the recommendation as in the paper on pages 46 and 47? So Cabinet requests Council to note, and then if you will recognise on section 7, 8 and 9, Council requests Council to approve. That will go to Council for approval. Are we comfortable to do all of that?
Agreed.
Good. Okay, colleagues, thank you. Thanks, Andy. Next one is number 6, Biodiversity Net Gain Unit Creation. Chris, would you like to introduce the paper, please?
Thank you, Leader. Biodiversity net gain is derived from the Environment Act in 2021. It will provide us with an unprecedented opportunity for nature recovery. The Council should look to maximise this opportunity by supporting the recommendations in this paper. Furthermore, we do need to look at how we can move forward with taking action for nature on our land in as many other ways as possible. By using district level licensing, countryside stewardship, we can find worthwhile projects on our estate. We can't take this further action without being prepared to commit to agreements that may put us at greater risk, but these risks are very limited and manageable. This will involve committing to legally binding agreements with third parties regarding taking action on our land. Now, this is necessary to access these funding streams that will help us take this essential action for nature. We will also be entering into legal agreements with private landowners, something we're more familiar with through Section 106 processes. We will be using an inspection fee to help resource the work moving forward. Officers will closely monitor and ensure that the regular feedback is provided in portfolio holder meetings. So I fully support all these recommendations and I look forward to working with our officers on a green estate audit and preparing subsequent proposals to Cabinet. So again, as I said earlier, this report does relate to taking action on council-owned land to promote nature and access appropriate associated funding in biodiversity net gain, district level licensing and countryside stewardship. It relates also to supporting landowners within the borough creating habitat banks via legal agreements with this council, and these will support the recently approved biodiversity strategy, the council plan in delivering the priority a borough where we protect, restore, reconnect and enhance our natural environment. So what we're asking in the paper is, and recommendations, that Cabinet approves consideration of the use of appropriate council land, and it also authorises the undertaking of an internal review of existing council-owned land to assess its capacity and suitability. For both approvals will cover the creation of the biodiversity net gain units which will be made available on the market to developers, either private or council associated developments, to enable fulfilment of the biodiversity gain condition. Creation of ponds and associated terrestrial habitats to fulfil Great Crested Newt district level licensing requirements that we've entered into, and make those habitats available to market via the Newt Conservation Partnership. And also the Countryside Stewardship Agreement, including woodland management plans. And the third recommendation that we'd like authorised is that the council can enter into 106 agreements with third-party landowners for the BNG habitat banks, and that this council delegates the authority to the head of planning and infrastructure in consultation with the cabinet member for strategic planning and infrastructure to agree the details of any scheme to be secured by such a legal agreement, and to the head of law and governments to enter into legal agreements on behalf of the council relating to the management, monitoring and enforcement of the BNG Habitat Bank schemes, enabling units to be purchased by applicants, and this will achieve biodiversity gain conditions in the planning applications. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Would anybody else like to make a contribution? Thank you. I think it's a really important paper. It's interesting, isn't it? Because we passed both the climate change emergency motion and we passed the ecological emergency motion, and this addresses both in their own way, but critically it picks up the ecological emergency, and it gives us a mechanism, doesn't it, to start doing the right things in our borough. We're not relying on anybody else. This is going on in our borough, and that's a really important step forward. So again, a really important decision to take because of the impact that it's going to have on the protection of and enhancement of our local natural environment. So thank you, Chris, for making the recommendation, reading the recommendations out. Colleagues, you see the recommendations are on page 16. If nobody has any other contribution, are you happy to pass the paper as recommended on page 16? Great. Thank you, colleagues. Okay, item 7, Eastrop Park improvements, proposed next steps. Chris.
Oh, well, good evening again, Leader. So Eastrop Park is a nationally recognised as a good quality park, being a recipient of the Green Flag Award for over 2 decades. It has the River Loddon passing through it, along with areas of trees and shrubs, wetland and amenity grassland, and it makes a notable contribution to biodiversity and the wider green infrastructure network. The park also marks the route of the old Basingstoke Canal, which is a notable heritage asset. Eastrop Park is well used. It provides a range of facilities and features for both residents and visitors to this borough, and it contributes to well-being as well as being the focus for different user groups, and is the location for a number of events throughout the year. Its popularity and importance as part of the wider biodiversity network will continue as this borough continues to grow. Habitats will need to be enhanced and protected, new facilities and features will need to be provided, and existing features will need to be refurbished and upgraded, all of which will require significant amounts of investments. And there are several external funding sources which will be explored to help provide more detail to deliver the first parts of some earlier work that identified a high-level idea improving biodiversity connections and facilities within a network of 7 parks to the east of Basingstoke, and this will be part of it. Again, this scheme of these improvements, it fits in with 2 of our council plan priorities, and that is a place where people can have pride in their community and the borough, and a borough where we protect, restore, reconnect and enhance our natural environment. So it's bringing the 2 things together, the enjoyment of our natural biodiversity. So again, the recommendations that are before us tonight, to approve the development of a scheme for potential improvements for Eastrop and seek external funding to contribute towards the delivery of these, and to note that the development of this work will be funded through existing resources. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Would anybody else like to comment? Laura.
Thank you. I think this paper is really exciting. I think the thing about this cabinet is we absolutely recognise the importance of the Eastrop Park to the town. It's a destination park. One of the first decisions we did as a council is to remove the car parking charge, because we recognise the importance of that. We also opened up the toilets so that they were open during the winter at weekends as well. You'll know that the paddling pool was allowed to deteriorate under the last administration, but it's open now, and it's open for the summer for the children during the summer holidays, so that's really good. But the fabric of the park is tired, and it's served us well in the town for many years, but it now needs regeneration, and it needs investment in those buildings and in all of the equipment within the park. And we're going to need a significant amount of capital to do that, and that's what we're looking to do. And I think it's a project going forward that we're very committed to, and we want it to be a very special park in our town centre. So I look forward to this going forward.
Thank you, Laura. Gavin.
Thank you. Laura's absolutely right. I mean, I went there as a kid, and most of the park hasn't changed. The play area in the middle, I think, was 106 months, about 10 years ago, so even that's getting tired. The rest of it is really, really tired. It shouldn't have been neglected for so long. It's absolutely credit to our officers that we still get green flag, because it's getting harder and harder and harder to maintain that park, given the sort of the leaking and the silt that sets around the lakes, etc. So they do an amazing job to keep it going. So it is desperate for some investment from wherever sources we can get. And it's also that important green lung in the town centre, a very built up area. I always reflect that in the last 15 years, we've probably built about 4,000 homes near the park, and not a single one has a garden. So it is the town centre's garden. Children's only access to countryside to getting out and playing is often Eastrop Park. That's the first journey into seeing ducks and things, because they don't have gardens, they live in a built up area, they don't have cars. So it's a really, really important, it's growing in importance. It's absolutely right we get this right, because I'd like to think that in 20, 30 years time, there'll be a different person sitting here who also has childhood memories of what a wonderful park it was.
Well said, everybody. Anybody else? Okay, the recommendation, as Chris has pointed out, is on page 28. Are you happy to take the paper with the recommendation? Agreed. Thank you, everybody. Next on the agenda is Housing Allocations Policy Minor Amendment. Laura, over to you.
Thank you. We welcome the feedback from the Ombudsman. I'm keen to take steps to put our schemes right as soon as possible. The recommendations on page 2 of the report sets out the changes being made. This would have immediate effect and is a consistent approach with the other neighbouring districts in Hampshire. These changes are in line with the government's guidance, which will ensure that victims of domestic abuse are able to move into social housing from a refuge or other forms of temporary accommodation. It has been estimated that an increase of up to 10 applicants who may not have been deemed to qualify will now qualify. And this is positive and in line with the work we are doing as being undertaken by our dedicated staff. The work relating to domestic abuse is being embedded throughout the council, with outcomes being that we are on course to obtain DAHA, which is a Domestic Abuse Housing Alliance accreditation, in November. And we are also into year 3 of our White Ribbon accreditation. We have achieved so much for our residents in relation to our residents policy, and has been identified by DAHA as an excellent example of best practice. We now have an online hub for residents, and it gives them a domestic abuse directory. Lots of the work is going on within the workplace with staff, and we have introduced domestic abuse champions networks, providing support and signposting. And finally, we have a unique arrangement with county, the first to be secured in the county, to deliver bespoke support and resources to Basingstoke residents experiencing domestic abuse. We now have specialist support advocates and an additional domestic abuse worker in post, co-located within the housing team. And they're exceptional, and they're also a really important resource that we can pull on, and officers within the housing department pull on. And just we should be really proud of what we've achieved, and the housing department are exceptional. So I give you this paper tonight.
Thank you, Laura. Anybody else like to comment? Thank you, colleagues. So the recommendation is on page 36. This is hugely important. I think we all know and probably have a casework where we've experienced supporting individuals through issues around domestic violence, and it's sad that we have to have services in the first place, but it is an issue that needs to be dealt with, and we are dealing with it as an authority in so many different ways. And I just want to echo Laura's words, just to commend the officer team for what they're doing. This is hugely significant and impactful, and so the actions that fall out of this, let alone the actions that fall out of all of the other work, gives us a record of doing so much good work to address the issues. So yeah, I absolutely endorse the paper. It's really important. Onley, would you like to say something?
I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Councillor Laura James, actually, because she has worked so hard on this portfolio in so many areas together with the officers. The amount of work and time she's invested in it has been really second to none. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Onley. And it's also to say the whole organisation has. I think the entire council has actually taken this as seriously as it needs to be taken, and that's a really important statement. All the council, whole council. So yeah, the recommendation is on page 36. Colleagues, if you're happy to approve the recommendation and paper, do we agree? Agreed. Thank you. I'm going to go to item 10 now, given item 9 is done, and it's the revenue outturn report, and that's Gavin.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, this is again a delayed paper. It's page 80, where we predicted one of our worst forecasts ever, that the general election would take place in January. We got that wrong, but there we go. The rest of the forecast is fairly accurate, to be fair. There is, the first thing we've got to do as Cabinet is note that we had a 1.16 million overspend or budget surplus come the end of the financial year, and that really is made up of two halves. Half of it relates to delayed spends of stuff that is still going to happen, and so we'll be asking Council to prove that £570,000 of that 1.16 million will just be put into the carry forward reserve to spend next time. The £590,000 underspend is a mixture. Primarily, the good news is that parking revenues continue to recover from COVID and increased again, and we're above what we thought they would be, and long may that continue, because obviously it's boosting our town centre as well as giving us some cash. In addition to that, we also, because of that delayed spend to the capital, it's such a significant amount of money, obviously it's sat in the bank earning interest, all our money is working, or taxpayers' money is working all year round, so if we haven't spent it, it is still earning interest, which obviously becomes available. That fortunately offset some of the increased costs. Again, that cost of living, the cost of cleaning contracts was slightly higher than we expected. Most things we do have come out slightly higher because of the increased inflation over a longer period than expected. The main £590,000 can really be related to some of the work we were doing on our community centres to make them green. That work was combined with other work the property services were doing anyway, so rather than having two surveys, we combined them, which meant we could do that within the existing property budget. So that's the council working more effectively and efficiently, and that gives us £590,000 we'll put into the MTFS reserve as we continue to review those cost pressures in preparation for this year's budget, or next year's budget. Unless any questions.
Thank you, Gary. Any comments from anybody? No. Can I just say thank you for the amount of work that's gone into this? I know how much work Gavin's put into the budget over the last year, and it's just worth saying that with the officer support and what you've done, this council's financial position is as robust as it can be, and I think it's just worth saying that in a climate where so many other councils are having to cut back on core services, and we're seeing our county colleagues make huge cuts to absolutely vital services. Basingstoke and Dean is not in that place. We are robustly strong in our finances. That's down to the work you've done and the work that's put the budgets right in a way that we wanted to this year as a new administration over the last year. This is a real testament, I think, to the work that's been going on over the last year as a new administration. And thank you to our officer team for what they've done. But thank you, Gavin, for making a good report and showing us what we are aiming to achieve. The recommendations are on the paper, on page 78. Are we happy to approve the recommendations and the paper as? Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Item 11 on the agenda this evening is Manydown North Governance, and Anna Lee, please.
Yes, hi. This is really just to appoint a new officer as a result of an officer that has left the council. The role was originally held by the Section 151 officer, and the proposal from the officers is that it go to the Director of Regeneration. This is for, there are two companies in the structure. One is the Manydown Garden community, and the other is the Manydown Development. And I'm just seeking Cabinet's approval to permit the appointment to be the Director of Regeneration.
Thank you, Anna Lee. Any comments? Just bearing in mind the public contribution we had earlier, I just think it's worth noting that by appointing the Director of Regeneration, we are making a very clear statement of the progress that we're making, as opposed to being the 151 officer. If we think about that, appointing the Director of Regeneration shows exactly where we're going on this and the future that we see being delivered. So thank you, Anna Lee. The recommendation is on the paper. Are we comfortable to make the recommendation with the paper? Agreed? Thank you, colleagues. Okay, everybody, that is the Cabinet meeting this evening. Thank you for your attendance and your attention. Take care.
Thank you.